In this video, I'm going to show you how to go from a wish list of business insights to a full working Looker Studio BI dashboard in minutes using large language models. The methodology I'm going to show you is platform agnostic. You can use this for any SQL database you want and generate beautiful dashboards in record time. I'm going to actually build this in a couple of minutes, and I'm going to give you the code in a link below this video so you can do this yourself. So I'm going to give you an e-commerce example using e-commerce data, but it doesn't have to be. This could be CRM data or any other data type that you want to use to build your dashboard. I'm just going to assume that you have transferred your data to a data warehouse such as Google BigQuery. So transferring your data from source to your data warehouse is pretty straightforward. You can use a service like Stitch Data, or you can use a platform like Airbyte to do this. It's almost a commodity at this point. I've also included a link below this video if you want to do this yourself if you're working on Shopify. I have a full tutorial on creating ETL jobs from Shopify to BigQuery. And of course, the data needs to be stored using a sensible data model. But if you're using a service like Stitch Data, this is going to come out of the box. Now let's get started building the dashboard. So here in Google BigQuery, in the Google BigQuery console, I have a dataset called ecom data looker, where I have 4 tables. I have customers, I have orders, and I have products. And then I have a table called customer tags, which contains customer attributes that are fixed over time. And this is pretty standard e-commerce data that you can transfer to BigQuery using a service like Stitch Data or Airbyte or something similar. So what I'm going to do now is I'm going to use the LLM framework LangChain to build views on these 4 tables. And then I'll use these views as a basis for a dashboard. And the views are simply SQL queries that are created using a LangChain SQL chain. So in the last couple of videos, I showed you how to do robust text-to-SQL in LangChain. And I'll put a link to those videos below this video. And these chains work by extracting the schema information from BigQuery and then using that schema information to formulate a prompt to a high IQ language model, such as Claude 3 or GPT-4, and then have that language model return executable SQL. And I'm going to use that chain now to create those views. So first I'm going to need a new dataset where the views can be stored. So I'm going to create a dataset called Looker Studio Views. And now I can programmatically feed these views into this new dataset and build a dashboard on top of this. So heading over to the Colab notebook, I have my SQL chain here that is built with LangChain, and I have my getSchema function that extracts the schema information from BigQuery. And again, if you want to see how this works, you should check out the Robust Text-to-SQL video. Then I have my service account key, dbq key.json, and I have a wish list of business insights, which is just a text file with prompts, essentially. And of course, I have my .env file with the API keys. In this case, I'm using Claude 3. So let me just show how the SQL chain works before I build the views. So I'm asking for the overall repeat purchase rate. The generated SQL is sometimes a bit clumsy. Sometimes it's actually incorrect, so you would have to check this. And as you can see, the chain returns executable SQL. But what I can do now is I can loop through the list of insights, and I can generate SQL for every insight and push that to BigQuery as a view. And then I've written a function that loops through every insight. It generates the SQL based on the insight using the SQL chain, and then it tries to execute that SQL. If it fails, I'm just going to regenerate. I'm not going to try to catch the error or anything fancy yet. So I'm going to use Claude 3 to generate some names for the views based on the insights. And then I'm going to run my main function process insights that takes a dataset name, the name I just created in BigQuery, the dataset for the views. It takes my list of insights. It takes my view names, the SQL chain, and the BigQuery client as input. And this function is just going to loop through the insights and create all the views one by one. And you could try to do this in bulk, so creating multiple views with one LLM call, but you'll find that the LLM is actually producing a higher quality result if you take these one by one. This is going to take maybe 2 minutes to run, and then we'll have all the views in BigQuery. And you can see that I'm executing this SQL and I'm transferring the data to a data frame and printing the output. And this is for me to take note if I need to change something, if there's something that I think is wrong. And you can see here one of the views, which is new revenue versus repeat revenue, seems to be wrong because we only have zeros in the repeat revenue column. So this SQL statement is wrong. I know that I now have to go check that SQL statement or regenerate it. So if the BigQuery client can't execute the query, or if the data looks wrong, you know that the query is wrong. So there's no point in checking anything until everything executes and until everything looks right. Then you go back and you check the SQL to make sure that it's actually correct. Okay, so we now have all the views in BigQuery in the Looker Studio views dataset. So I'm going to head over to Looker Studio, create a new report, and then I'm going to import the BigQuery data source. So I'm going to find my dataset in my project, and here we have all the views that are generated. And I have to add these one by one. This is a bit annoying, and this is going to take maybe a minute. So I'm not going to burn your time with this. I'm just going to add all these views one by one to the report. And once we have the views in here, we can start building the actual dashboard. But before I build the dashboard, I'm just going to go back to the notebook and I'm going to regenerate the new versus repeat revenue SQL code. And this looks correct. So I'm going to push this as a view. I already deleted the other one. And to do that, I'm just going to use the create BigQuery view function I wrote for this. And now we have an updated view in the dataset. Okay, so now we can build the dashboard. I'm going to build the first row, which is going to consist of KPIs or important metrics. So we want our revenue, we want new orders, repeat order rate, average order value, and so on. These are some of the metrics that you want to monitor for an e-commerce business. And I'm simply going to drag these KPIs to the top row. I have 6 in total. Then I'm going to add a new versus repeat revenue line chart that shows me how much new revenue did I get over the last 30 days compared to how much repeat revenue did I get. And to configure the chart, you need to select the right data source from the added data sources. And then you can simply drag the metrics that you want to visualize to the chart. Here we have the new revenue. Now we just need to add the repeat revenue to the same chart. I'm also going to add a simple stacked bar chart showing revenue broken down by acquisition source and predicted gender. There are different ways you can visualize this. You just need to select the right data source first, and then you need to select the dimensions and the metrics you want to visualize. And for this view, we can do a breakdown either by gender or by acquisition channel. And the breakdowns you can do depends on what static tags you have in the database. Here we go, this will work. Then I'm going to add a table showing top product pairs frequently purchased together. And again, to configure this table, I'm just going to add the right data source, the view for this, and make sure that the dimensions are correct. And here we have 3 dimensions. We have product 1, product 2, and then the count of the number of times the products were purchased together. The last thing I'm going to add is a Google map showing revenue by city. And I'm going to choose a bubble map for this. And again, after selecting the right data source, this works out of the box. The last thing we can do is to style the dashboard by selecting an appropriate theme, and then you can make this look nice. And of course, if you don't like the KPI names at the top, you can always shorten them in the queries, so changing the SQL alias that was used. But I'm not going to bore you with the styling of this dashboard. Let's instead quickly have a recap of what I did with the LLMs. So once you have the LangChain SQL chain, including the getSchema function that extracts the schema information from the database and you have the function that processes the generated SQL, injects it into BigQuery, you have everything you need to build dashboards in record time. And of course, we haven't even looked at catching tracebacks and feeding errors back to the LLM when it makes a mistake. If you do that, it's going to be even more robust. And that's actually needed if you want to build advanced dashboards. If that's something you want me to cover, let me know in the comments below. Now, if you want to learn how to build these robust text-to-SQL chains, I suggest you watch the 2 text-to-SQL videos. And make sure you subscribe for more content like this in the future. Thanks for watching.